Good morning. Hello. Welcome to today's live stream and welcome to Aloha 24 December. So this month in our challenge, we are looking at migratory birds. So these are birds that spend the winters here with us in Hawaii and then go someplace else in the summer. I chose 4 birds for this month, and the first one is the Laysan albatross. So let me show you what we're going to paint today. This is a cute family, and did you see the little baby chick there? I'm gonna put this one in the middle between those two. This is a combination of watercolor and colored pencil. I'm using a new paper today, or new to me at least, which I'm really fond of. So interestingly enough, even though this is a paper from France, from Clairefontaine, bamboo paper, I actually found this in Japan. And because I really like products from this company, I thought I'd give it a try. Unfortunately, I realize now that I'm not going to be able to get this easily in America. So I guess this would be something for when I go back to Germany. But just letting you know, this is the paper I'm using today. For this particular illustration, because we're going to do a little bit of wet on wet for the first step, I do recommend that you use paper that has at least 40 or 50% of cotton or another natural fiber. Okay, let's turn the camera around and I'll show you which supplies I'm going to use today, and I'm going to get started with our little albatross family. Okay, let's turn this around. Here we go. I have my iPad ready too, so in a moment I'm going to be ready to check in on the chat and see who's painting with us today. Okay, as always, please let me know how the sound quality is, if I should zoom in or zoom out. Okay, let me just get rearranged here on my table. As I said, I'm going to use Clairefontaine bamboo paper. I'm going to put this on the side now. And later on, once the stream is done, I will update everything in the caption down below. So you can come back anytime to the caption down below and see which products and materials I used. Okay, got my watercolor paints. Oh, and this is one of the little things that came out of the kiln this week. But, you know, the thing with the pottery is that I'm a beginner, so I had no idea how to dry this without, or how to dry this flat. I do know now, but back then I didn't. So it wobbles, which is fine. I'm probably going to just stick a little bit of a kneadable eraser underneath it to prevent it from wobbling that much. Or somebody suggested to put hot glue, a drop of hot glue. So yeah, I'm still deciding. So gonna use a palette, gonna use watercolors. These are my handmade Aloha watercolors, but feel free, as always, to use your own colors. If you want to use the same colors, I am using, not this one. Okay, let me start here because this is the first color we're gonna use. This is Manta, a gray ochre. And then I have Vanilla, that's a white titanium buff. This one is called Waimea. This is a raw, is it a raw, what is it? Raw umber, I think. I'm blanking out right now. I think it is. Shark is a black ochre. Actually, it's a gray ochre that's just very dark. Awapuhi is a primary red. It's kind of pinkish though. So if you have any kind of magenta color, like quinacridone magenta, for example, that would work perfectly. We really only need it for this tiny, tiny part. So Honestly, any type of vibrant, transparent red that you have will work, and we'll mix it with papaya, which is an Indian yellow hue. Again, any type of darker yellow you have will work for this. You do not have to use the exact same colors that I have today. Alrighty, and for brushes, let me just move this whole thing over. So for the background wash, I'm going to use a big mop brush today. You can also use a flat brush. We're going to just paint over the whole background in one go with a large brush. And then for the rest, I'm going to use my number 6 Shimoni Art round brush. And I think for the eyes, because that is kind of teensy tiny, we could either do the colored pencil, or if you want to do everything with watercolor, you can also use a very tiny round brush. I have a size 0 here. But I do recommend for, you know, the really fine details that you just go ahead and use the colored pencil, at least for today's session. And of course, you can do whatever you want. If you want to do the whole piece in watercolor, that works too. I also have a pencil, so we're going to do a little sketch first. And then for colored pencils, I'm using, they're both Caran d'Ache from Switzerland. One is a Supracolor 2, water soluble. This is the color charcoal gray. And then I have a Museum Aquarell by the same company, and this is called Sepia 10%. Again, any kind of dark, either black or charcoal or dark indigo, and some type of gray colored pencil will work for our project today. I'm not going to use this one. Put these to the side. I worked on a few other things, so I still have a few of those supplies that I used yesterday lying around here. All right, let me look over at the chat. Hi, Mom. Hi, Steph, Yvonne, Kerstin. So good that you guys are here. Let me take a sip of tea. You know, it's awfully quiet around here. I'm wondering what the puppies are doing. It's usually not a good sign if it's too quiet and I don't see them. I might have to check on them later. I hope they just maybe lay down somewhere to sleep. Okay, let's get started. I'm gonna just really go quickly through the steps that we're gonna take. So we're gonna start with a pencil sketch, and then we're gonna cover the whole background, including the birds, with this very light gray wash. So we have a little basis for our painting. And then while the paint is still wet, we're gonna go in with gray and define some areas of the feathers of the bird parents, and then also the shape of this little chick. And then we're going to let it dry and go in for some details. So the bills, the eye area, and a few more details in the feathers. And last step will be colored pencil. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to put this here for reference. Move everything over. Let me just rearrange this real quick. Okay, and for those of you who received my newsletter, you should have received the template and the materials list yesterday. So just in case you haven't seen the newsletter yet and want to paint along with me today, or maybe paint later, you can just have a look at the template. Okay, let's start with the drawing. So we have our 2 birds. We want to place them in about the first third of our page over here, and just draw in 2 circles for the heads. Let me get a bit closer because I don't think you can see anything. I'm going to press down a little harder too so you can see better, but for the first circles I want to keep them pretty light, because you know there's this thing with pencil on watercolor paper, and especially erasing on watercolor paper, which is a bit tricky at at some level, you know, the paper will start pilling. So just start with very faint lines. And if you're happy with your placement, this should be a triangle here. Then you can go back in and define your lines a little more. So we'll start with the head over here. And then put the eye. Over here, very close to the line of the head. Then we'll hop over to our other bird, a curved line for the forehead. This is where the beak's gonna be. And see how I'm making this jagged line here for the beak. And then from here, you're gonna place this eye pretty much in the center of your circle. So with the first bird, the eye was very close to this line here from the head. And over on this side, the eye is more towards the center of the head or the circle of the head. Okay, got these two now, and then, there's a puppy. Hi, puppy. Hello, hi. I was wondering where you were. What were you doing? Hi. So, little rascal. Yeah, I know. So, if you followed my my journey, you know that my neighbor had puppies, 4 puppies, young ones, and eventually, you know, well, it had to happen. We decided to keep one of them. So I got a puppy now. I mean, officially. It's always been that the puppies or the dogs always treated my home as their home too. They just come over every single day to visit me. It's the same driveway too, so there's really no physical barrier or anything. They can just roam freely. But I gotta say, it makes a difference now that I have, you know, my puppy. I'm super happy. He's just such a sunshine. So for the little chick, for the little baby bird, not puppy, I drew in the 2 eyes, and then in the center, the little beak here. And then from this on, we can just fill in the rest of the birds. Now, if you have started maybe a little too high up or too much on one side and you can't fit the whole bird, don't worry about it. See how I did that here? Even though this is the whole bird, because we look at it from an angle, you can easily fake or change the angle of the bird a little bit so that it fits, you know, your page. Or, you know, just don't even worry about it. Not the whole bird has to fit on your page. Just saying. Of course, in general, if you want to make sure everything fits on your page, for example, if you're painting a greeting card, in that case, you know, just do the whole shape first. So you start with the circles, and then you do the big elliptic shape for the body, especially for beginners who maybe not have the experience and the eye yet, how big the piece is going to be. It's very helpful to really start just very lightly drawing in the shapes of your birds, or whatever you paint actually. Hi, Alina. Hello, the lavish brush. Oh, yeah, I remember. Yes, you came over, yeah, from Instagram. Welcome. Another bird painter. You know, it's always interesting to me to see what people love to paint and draw. And for me, it's basically everything. But I do have to say birds have my heart. I don't know why. I guess there doesn't always have to be a reason why we love painting certain things. You know what? Maybe it is because here in Hawaii, birds are the predominant animal. So Hawaii is very rich in birds. There are hardly any mammals here. I mean, except for pets, of course. We do have tons of dogs and cats. But I mean, native mammals, there's only the bat. And if you even want to count the ocean animals, but here on land, we just have this one, this one native Hawaiian animal, and everything else is birds pretty much, or ocean animals. So I guess being surrounded by birds and all the nature conservation efforts pretty much focus on birds here on island. Just got me really interested in that topic too. Okay, I just drew in a little more definition of the feathers. Make sure your bird is long enough. I think mine is a bit short, looking at how these birds are actually very, long in body shape. So just gonna add a little more length to my albatross here on the left-hand side. And the neck should be relatively slim, but not too slim. Otherwise, I think it might just end up looking like a duck. And then we're gonna draw in the beak here. Hi, puppies. Oh, Malito. Hi, another puppy. Hi. Yay, hello. Sorry about that, guys. I have yet another dog visiting. Okay, you go play. Okay, that's the mama dog, and of course the puppy's very happy to see her. She's, well, yeah, I'd say she's happy too, ish. I think at some point they're happy when they get, when they're done with their puppy kids. Alrighty, and then let's move over to this bird over here. Let me just erase this line here a little bit because there is kind of like this bump in the forehead here. And then from there on, we draw a curve down the beak. Make it nice and round here. This is a very distinctive feature of the albatross. Let me show you the photo, the reference photo here. Okay, so we have this, what I call bump, which is just actually where the eye is, and then a nice curved line. This is my alternative phone, and unfortunately, as you can see, it says low battery, but I can leave it on here for as long as it will be alive. Let me see if I can brighten that up a little bit. I had this phone forever. I think this is a 5S. And I really only recently switched to the iPhone 12. And this one, I mean, I charged this almost never, and the battery is so good for so long. It's just dead right now because I haven't charged it in a long time. But yeah, boy, did I love how well that phone worked. And my new phone, oh my gosh, I mean, I have to charge this thing like what feels like twice a day. Okay, I'm just erasing, redrawing this line here so I can make it a bit more, I can make the neck a bit more thinner. And I do realize that these birds, even though they look kind of simple to draw in a way, I guess, to get the shape right, it's tricky. So no shame in using my template and just copying the lines onto your paper for the initial drawing. But I always want to show you guys how I go about the sketch as well, so that if you feel inclined to practice freehand sketching, that you can follow my steps here. And don't worry if the thing looks more like a duck or, you know, another type of animal. It's all practice and you'll get better. The more you do it, the more you sketch and illustrate, the better and the faster you'll be with sketching. Okay, the other distinctive feature of these beautiful birds are that they have these dark spots around the eyes. I'm just checking if you can actually see this. So there's a reflection. Hope this is better. Okay, let me just look over to the chat. Somebody just said, could you please show us the puppies? They're pretty big at this point, so they don't fit on my table. Sorry, I have just one over here right now. The others are already all grown-up dogs. Hi, Linda. Linda's late. That's fine. That's fine. Oh, and Steph has the same phone. Yeah, I have the same one. And oh, yes. Yeah. Okay, so the lavish brush just said that there is this 74-year-old albatross, Laysan albatross. Yes. So another of my followers, Jean Whitman, told me the same story. She saw something on the BBC and I was just shocked. I did not know that these birds, first of all, can be so old and then still raise chicklets. So apparently there is a Laysan albatross that was banded in 1956. And because they only get to maturity around, 5 years old, they think, oh, and her name is Wisdom, by the way, which I find really cute. So Wisdom, now in 2024, apparently is 74-year-old, and she is raising more little Laysan albatrosses. So that's just amazing. I do know that there are, quite a few animals in our world that can be or can get pretty old, of course, but I just didn't know that about albatross. I knew it about parrots, but yeah.
Turtles.
Well, of course turtles. Turtles are so famous though. That's Mr. Coffee in the background trying to be smart. Hey, Alina. Oh, yes. Okay. Oh, puppies. I do want to show them, but honestly, they don't fit here on the table. Oh, I'm sorry. And I think they're actually not in the room right now. So I guess, for Alina's man, I would go and try. Okay.
Here's what the puppies are chewing.
Okay, here's what the puppy was chewing up. See, I told you when it gets quiet, I'm getting worried. So, okay. Yes, that's the puppy. That's one of the puppies. Hey, kiddo. Hi. Yeah. Alina and her man want to see you. Okay, enough. Thank you. That's my puppy. And that was my washi tape. Bye-bye, washi tape. Rest in peace. That was a nice one. Oh well. At least he didn't chew up the fountain pen like my friend's dog. Like a, I don't know, $200 fountain pen or something. all my fountain pens are like 10 bucks for a reason, I guess. Uh, well, Alina, I'm only saying that because I don't want to mispronounce his name. So is it Bogdan? Or is there like an aspirated letter in there, something? So yeah, that's why I'm saying Alina's man. Okay, you guys, we have our illustration, not illustration, the sketch ready, more or less. You can, of course, always just do all the details with your sketch. For my part here, I'm happy with having, you know, this amount of sketching done. And now let me, I dip my large mop brush into water, and now I'm picking up some of my Manta Ray gray ochre. I have to say though, if you work with pans like I do, I have to say it's easier to use large full pans if you have, you know, if you're working with a large brush. So just make sure, especially if you're using delicate brushes, that you kind of gently pick your paint from that pan. You know, don't go crazily about it. You might hurt your brush after a while. So just, you know, gently move the paint kind of like into the center from the sides, and then pick it up with your brush. Or if you're using tube paint, you know, for large brushes, that's actually a good idea too. I personally love using pans myself because I take my paints everywhere too. But yeah, I have found myself that I'm using these larger full pans a lot too. Okay, we have our little gray mix, and I'm gonna use a little bit of my buff titanium white as well. Just mix it in to make for an interesting gray beige shape, not shape, paint mix. So before we lay down the paint, we're gonna just put water all over the painting. Don't be afraid to paint even the white parts of the bird, because in the end, we're gonna add so much dark contrast that, you know, the white parts will be white enough, if that makes sense. Naturally, you could also just leave out the white parts of the bird, but believe me, it's gonna look more natural if you have a base color on your paper like this. It just will tie the whole painting together a lot more. So the only thing I can say, of course, is that in the areas that you know will be white later, just lay down a little less pigment. So more pigment in the areas that will be darker, like that little chicklet here and the dark feathers of these two birds. And then the neck part here, you can just kind of paint around it, but do leave a little bit of that background wash. Okay, I have to explain what's going on in the chat now. So Michelle, she's the one whose puppy ate her fountain pen, and she just said it was a $500 one. I didn't even know you could pay so much money for a fountain pen. But no, I did know. I'm lying. I did know. But I didn't know it was a $500 one. Well, that was probably the best treat ever for Checo. Okay, I'm also glad I pronounced the name right. Yay! But hey, Alina's man, I think that's how we're gonna go about that from now on. Okay, so while your paper is still wet, let me show you. So it's not dripping water, it has a nice wet sheen. We're gonna pick up some more of our gray paint. So now we're gonna use less water, more pigment for a higher concentration of paint. And dropping it into those areas that will be darker later on. So as you can see, I'm just dropping the paint in and dipping my paintbrush like this. And this way we create kind of like this puffy looking chiclet. So the feathers are still very soft with these young little baby birds. And the wet on wet technique is a perfect way to set a foundation to showcase kind of like the pom-pom ball nature of this little bird. Let's move on to the other birds. There in large strokes, you can just add a more concentrated version of this gray color and also mix in some of your black. I think this might actually be the first time I'm using black in a live stream, right? I mean, I almost never use black. The reason why I'm using this today is because this is a granulating paint and I just love the texture that this creates. I think it's beautiful for feathers and rocks, all sorts of things. And what I usually use is indigo. So usually I use indigo in a very highly concentrated indigo for anything dark in animals, landscapes, whatever. But my indigo has 0 granulation. So I decided to go and use some black for a change. I could, of course, mix in some indigo. I might try that. Let me try that. Just because I have it here on the table. See how much I love this color, my synthetic indigo, Kohola. Ooh, that is pretty. So over here, I'm mixing it with my black ochre. Very pretty. Need a little bit more black. Rinsing my brush first. Oh, another tip, because we're talking delicate brushes. This is not a delicate brush, by the way. It is synthetic fibers, bristles. But you can also, you can use a different brush to get the paint out of your pans and mix your paints. So you can use a very inexpensive brush to take your paint and mix it. And then just do the actual painting part with your more delicate brush. Ooh, this is so nice. Okay, I'm just gonna go over it real quick with my black and indigo mix. And because I have the black paint in my mix, it will still granulate, even though I added the indigo. Oh, this is fabulous. I don't think it really shows up probably here in the stream on the video, but it now has a little bit of a blue sheen to it, which is really something that I love, and I think it goes into my style because I do use a lot of very dark blue for any type of shadow. So style, I think, can also be defined in what colors you use the most, of course, how you paint your shadows, how you even, define light and dark. Okay, so now we have a lot of blobs going on all our birds. And let me just put in a few little drops of my dark color into the little chick here. So the little baby bird will kind of stay a little blob even in the end. We're going to define the shapes of the face a little more with colored pencil later on. But for the most part, it's just going to be very blobby. Whereas with the adult birds here, I'm going to go and add some more details. Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush so that it still holds a little bit of the dark pigment. And I'm going to drop this in around the eye part for both birds. You can switch to a smaller brush at this point if you like. So I'm moistening the area around the eye with a very watery mix of the same pigment and some water. I'm adding a shadow here on the left hand side of my bird. And over here I'm dragging the paint down, adding a shadow, and also here at the top of the beak. Okay, we can also add a shadow down here. So you might notice that I'm not really doing the exact same steps as in the step-by-step, you know, picture-by-picture tutorial. And that's just because for those picture-by-picture 5-step tutorials, you know, sometimes I paint a little differently, but it's very difficult to portray that in just a few pictures. So I sometimes change how I paint tutorials according to which medium I'm in. So if I can show you in a video, you know, it's much easier for me to show you exactly the process that I would paint it in than when I have just a few photos at my disposal. Then I have to change you know, the order of steps a little bit, just in case you're wondering. Michelle in the chat just says that she didn't even see the little chicklet. And hey, you're not the only one. Honestly, when I'm telling you, when I looked at the reference photos, I did not immediately see that. Look at that. I think because the bird parents are so white, you know, it stands out so much. That's where the focus goes. Plus, they have the only color in that photo too. Naturally, your eye gets drawn to that, or my eye did. And then this little thing is so gray and it's so cute down here. So same with the painting. The focus naturally goes to the brighter parts and, you know, the color parts. So I think it's just a very natural thing. But how fun! It's kind of like discovery photo. Okay, so for the next step, you know, this has to be dry. So I'm gonna go and see. This is still very watery. Let me pick up a little bit of my paint that is pooling so that when I dry it with a hairdryer, it doesn't splash around everywhere. Okay, all right, I'll be right back. I'm gonna just dry this with my hairdryer. enough. Yeah, it's still a little wet here around the corners, but that's fine. We can work with that. Turns out, I'm looking at the chat, none of you saw the check, huh? I just think it's so interesting. It's really conducive to what I said about the psychology of photos or paintings, you know, where the focus is, and because of colors and shapes, where our attention gets drawn to, or what draws our attention. So you can play with that too. If you construct your own paintings or have your own painting ideas, you know, you can guide the viewer's eye and then hide little surprises in the painting. Okay, so next we're gonna add a few more details in the feathers and to that little invisible chiclet. So let's start with our buff titanium white. And this is a very opaque paint, meaning it's not transparent. And because I do want it to be a bit more transparent, I'm gonna add quite a bit of water to my paint mix. And I'm gonna go over a few areas that I already defined as shadows. So I'm starting with my bird on the left here, painting over my shadow, and then I'm rinsing my brush with water. I'm drying it on my towel, and then dragging the paint from the left to the right to create kind of like a nicer gradient. And then doing the same here, see where it's already gray, so I'm dragging my brush from that gray part into the wet part to soften the edges and to blend those two colors. This is a very, very subtle step here. And, you know, it will hardly be noticeable later on, but it makes just the edges a bit softer, and it will define this edge here on the left side a little more too. Because, you know, all you have now is this little rim of gray, and then it blends into our buff titanium white. I'm gonna add some of this same color here at the bottom to define the belly of the bird. And alongside those feathers. Again, I'm rinsing my brush in water, drying it off, and then dragging the paint across until I hit those dark feathers. And those ones do not drag, so just kind of finish there to maintain that line here of the dark feathers. Picking up a little bit more pigment. And then we're gonna paint in the face of our little chiclet. So it's gonna be kind of like a mask that this little guy is wearing. Little superhero mask here around the beak and the eyes. And then a few more strokes throughout the plumage, just for some more definition and interest. But as I said, this bird will be mostly defined by our colored pencil lines later, defining the face. Everything else is just going to be hidden away. Okay, moving over to the bird on the right hand side. I'm adding some of my very diluted buff titanium white paint and painting it over the shadows that are already there in the gray area. Adding a little more, and then I'm going to rinse my brush again and drag this paint out into the lighter, almost white area. And as I said in the beginning, because we painted the whole page with this light gray wash, none of this is actually really pure white, as in paper white. You can see the difference here. It's very subtle, but it does make a difference. And I do think it ties everything together better and more harmoniously. Okay, I'm rubbing this hard edge from my first layer down there, the darker gray layer, and just blending it into my buff titanium and dragging it all across. So this technique is actually something you can use for other things that are white. For example, white flowers. You can just go over the whole thing with one very, very light wash and then add a few defined shadows, and then from there drag the paint all across the white area. So it's not completely white, but it will look very white in contrast to the shadow areas in the background. Okay, so let's go about adding some more details for our feathers, and then we're gonna paint in the beaks a little later. Gonna zoom out a little, oops, sorry. Okay, thank you, Linda. Because you weren't here in the beginning, I did mention this palette that, you know, this just came out of the kiln, and it is very wobbly because I didn't know how to make flat pieces back then when I made this. But it's fine, I do love it. And I'm just gonna stick something underneath so it's not so wobbly anymore. Okay, I'm holding my brush upright. I have the dark black indigo mix, and I'm just gonna add some half circle shapes. You can be as exact or as loose as you want, and you know me, I'm more on the loose side when it comes to painting. So we're just going to kind of indicate that this bird has feathers in this shape here. I'm not even concerned about getting the rows all in order, you know, because feathers are actually on the bird, they're relatively symmetrical, or very symmetrical actually, especially when they spread their wings. But again, I'm only indicating that there is some texture and feathers here. And then at the bottom, like literally I'm holding the brush like this, just barely holding it with 2 fingers. I want very, very loose strokes and lines to indicate the airiness of the feathers. And then add a little bit of definition to the top part of your bird. If this is too tricky for you, you can also do this part with a color pencil later. And then we'll do the same thing over here for our little baby bird. Just add a few tiny strokes with your dark color. Make sure you don't add them in a too regular fashion. So you want wider strokes, broader, kind of going into all direction, really like wild strokes. Because the tiny, tiny feathers of this baby bird are still so short and soft and short, you know, they stick out into all directions, and you want to indicate that by adding little strokes wildly going left and right and up and down and sideways. And then for our bird here on the right side, we'll do the same as we did over here, holding the brush upright and loosely adding some half circle shapes. Oh, I almost dipped my paint in my tea. Okay, I'm gonna pick up a little bit more of my dark gray or black paint. More pigment, less water. And adding it here to the bottom side of the bird in little strokes, not big swoops, little pat, 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 just to add some more weight and shadow here at the bottom and also here in this part. I'm watering it down a little bit and adding some shadow here. So this is underneath the bird on the left side and also underneath the little baby bird here. Oh, I gotta move my tea away. I'm just glad the tea is so low at this point that I didn't reach it with my brush. For all of you who haven't seen my latest YouTube video, this is one of the things I got at the Ghibli store. I'm in love. It's so cute. And honestly, folks, this is something that I couldn't do myself in my pottery class. I mean, maybe I could do something like this mug. It would not be symmetrical like this. But, I mean, these fine details. So, I think I had a very good excuse to buy this one because I can't make it myself. And honestly, even if I could, I mean, there are some things that I just want to buy and I don't want to concern myself with trying to make it myself. Always a good excuse. I can always find a good excuse to buy a Totoro item. Okay, let me just look over to the chat, see what you guys are thinking. So Steph says I should look at the work of Robert Bateman Wildlife. I will. Thanks for the tip. And yeah, if it makes you happy, then get it. I agree, Steph, but I should not, you know, this does not apply to art supplies because that would have no end, none, zero. So I have to restrain myself there. Last year, I actually managed to not buy any supplies for 6 months, if you believe it or not. That excludes stuff that I need for, you know, maintaining my watercolor store. But like stuff for myself, it's like still hard for me to believe that I managed that. Okay, moving on to Papaya, which is an Indian yellow hue. Okay, diluting it a little bit on the palette. This is a very tinting and very, not tinting, but very strong color. So use it sparingly for this project. And just paint the whole beak with your yellow color. As I said in the beginning, it doesn't have to be this particular shade. You can also use any other darker yellows. Or just mix a yellow with a tiny bit of orange. Make sure that you don't touch any other parts of the painting that might still be wet, or otherwise you'll have interesting abstract explosions. And while the paint is still wet, we're gonna drop in some tiny amount of our red. I'm actually pre-mixing it a little bit with the yellow that was still on the palette. And then just drop it in here at the top. It's very unusual for me to paint in an almost monochromatic fashion like this. You know that I love color, and especially turquoise and pink. So most of my work is actually very colorful. So I'm so tempted to just, you know, add bright colors, which of course, you know, that would actually be an interesting idea, wouldn't it? Maybe do some large flowers in the background. But in order to keep the length of my live tutorials manageable, we're gonna just stick to the birds. It's more an idea for you guys. So if you wanna add, you know, some nice color pops in the background, feel free to do that. Or maybe just some cliffs, you know, you could do like more of a blue sky and add some rocky cliffs, or maybe green cliffs, green hills in the background. Hi, Carrie. Hello, hello. Okay, I don't think I need to repeat this, but my live streams are, of course, always available for you to rewatch later. So if you're late to the party and you like the motif and you want to paint it, or you're watching now and just watching and not painting with me, just feel free to come back and watch anytime. Okay, so for the eyes, as I said, please feel free to do everything with colored pencil at this point, but I will go ahead and show you how to do the eye part with watercolor as well. We're using a very highly concentrated ratio pigment to water. You can also actually just use the pigment right out of the pan if you like. Again, holding my brush upright. The way I paint eyes is that I always start with this shape to define the eye, and it's almost done already at this point. So it's really a very tiny shape. Let me zoom in. I fill it in a little more. Very important for these eyes to leave a highlight, which means a little white dot. And then rather than finishing the eye, I start painting around it. Remember I showed you the photo, they have this very dark spot around the eyes. And then the mascara part here. Another distinctive feature for this bird. And see how, because I drew the line around the eye, it's actually already done. I wouldn't fill it in anymore. If you're trying this and you realize that you just painted the whole thing, you can, of course, just let it dry and add a drop of white gouache on top, or a Posca pen, something that is opaque and white. So don't be afraid to try this technique out, you know, doing everything with a brush and watercolor, because you can go over it with an opaque medium and fix that, you know, mistake if you make it. I just rinsed my brush and I'm diluting this very, very dark black a little bit and dragging it towards the beak. Rinsing my brush again. And I'm taking a little bit of that black off of this area and then adding it to define this shape here, which is just, how do you say, a continuation of the bill into the head area of the bird. Make sure that the paint here, the yellow and red, is dry enough for you to add this part. If not, you can use a hairdryer. Or if this is too intimidating anyways, then as I said, you can just do this with colored pencil. And if you use a water-soluble colored pencil, you can go over everything while it's still wet. Because These types of colored pencils are extremely soft and they won't rip the paper, even if the paper is still wet. So don't ever use a regular colored pencil on paper that's still wet because it will tear off or tear up the fibers of the paper. Hi, Sylvie. Hey, don't worry. I think a few people came a bit late, and I think maybe also because I think Kum had a live stream today as well. The brush company over on Instagram. You know, it's almost impossible to find a good date for live streams where kind of, you know, nobody else is doing something. So I usually, for example, the reason I don't do live streams on Tuesday is because my friend Tanya usually does hers on Tuesday and I want to watch them myself. Okay, so I showed you how to paint this eye with watercolor, and this one over here we just do with colored pencils. So you can also see the difference. I think with the colored pencil it turns out that it's a bit less pronounced, I guess. It's a bit more, how do you say, faint looking, but I mean it not in a negative way. A bit more subtle, feel like. Maybe subtle is the word, huh? Then with some nice little tiny strokes, you can define that shadow going down on the left side of the neck a little more. All right. Yeah, which one do you prefer? I mean, for me, honestly, I like both styles. I think it really depends on, how should I put this? I think this one with the colored pencil, it works better with what I already have on paper because it is more mute and less, you know, it doesn't pop as much. Whereas this part here, it really stands out at this point because it's, you know, has such sharp lines here and it's so dark. So if you want to decide or choose, you know, which technique you prefer, and you can do both, then you can also analyze what you prefer. You know, do you want a more defined, sharp edge illustration style, or do you want a more almost like a vintage look? So now I'm just going around with my colored pencil and I'm just adding a few sorry guys for all the zooming in and out today, but I really try to, you know, make it as easy for you as possible to see what I'm doing in a good way. I'm changing to my sepia colored pencil. And now I'll just go over all my birds and add a few more details and textures. And I'm swapping out this one for my dark charcoal colored pencil again. So you can either do one color and then just fill in the color in all the places that you feel is necessary and then do the other one, or you can just kind of do bird by bird. I guess it's a matter of preference. I don't know, I kind of change it up wildly, I guess. I'm not sticking to just one method. Okay, I think this bird is pretty done at this point. Maybe, you know what, here. Let me show you the reference photo one more time. So you can see here in the beak, There's the nose hole, nostril, I guess. And it has a very defined raise. See that? And then a line down. So it's those little things that when you look at reference photo, you will notice. You can even write these things down. So these will be the distinctive features of the animal that you're drawing. And every bird will have something that makes it, that sets it apart from another one. So for this Laysan albatross, it's the dark parts around the eye, and it's also, you know, the interesting ombre effect of the colors, and then these details here. So you want to make sure that you get these into your illustration. You can be as loose as you want with a lot of things or a lot of parts of your bird. For example, you know, I'm very loose with the feathers. But if you add or include a few very distinctive features, your bird will still be recognizable as this Laysan albatross. And you could take this really to a place where you're drawing almost like a cartoon version of this bird. And still, if you include those distinctive features, people who know what this bird looks like will recognize it. Okay, let's add a shadow here to define the face a little more. All right, so I think the bird parents are done at this point, and now we just have to look at our little baby bird down here. Mr. Hide in the Shadows. Okay, I think I'm gonna draw in those eyes with watercolor again. Again, small brush, size round, round brush, size 0. Hold it not totally upright, but you know, kind of upright, not too much on the side. That will give you a hard time. And again, I'm starting with this shape, kind of like a, it's almost like a moon shape. And it's so interesting, you guys. So I grew up in Europe where the moon stands like vertically in the sky like this. So, and it waxes and wanes like this. Over in Hawaii, in here, we have the Cheshire cat grin. So the moon goes like this, and it is so weird for me. You know, when you grow up and every time you look at the moon, it is a certain way, and then you move to the other side of the planet and it is another way. It's so confusing. Still to this day, and I've been here for almost a decade, so it's, it's very interesting. Okay, I drew my Cheshire cat moon shape eye. And I think I'm gonna close these here at the top. Okay, I think that's a bit of too much of a highlight. Let's make him a bit darker. I think that's good. It really does look like a mask now, huh? That's cute. Picking up some more of my black paint. And now we're gonna paint in the beak of the little guy. So that's pretty much just a black geometrical shape here, or at least in my interpretation. There is, of course, more to it. If you zoom into the photo, you can actually see that it's more rounded, you know, on top. So again, I think this is really also up to you how much you want to stick to your reference and how freely you want to interpret the photo. And with my really fine brush, holding it upright, adding some more of my zigzag lines. This is also a good opportunity to use a colored pencil to add a bit more of these little lines that point everywhere to define the really soft looking, fluffy looking baby bird here. I have to say the little one in the photo has really more of a defined head and neck. I made mine look like really like a like a little pom-pom. But I kind of like it. I kind of like it so fluffy and round. So okay, and a few more textural features here on this bird. Maybe something a bit lighter. You know what, looking at my original painting, I think I used some kind of a white colored pencil here too. I usually write down the ingredients, the ingredients list on the back, but I didn't for this one. So let me just grab something light colored. Ash gray. Let's see how that works. Ooh, pretty. Ooh, I like that. Oh yeah, that's a nice color for this one. And because I'm drawing on top of black, this shows up really nicely. Ooh, very cool. Okay. Yeah, I think... Oops. Oh, I'm so sorry, you guys. Oh, man. My phone just popped out of the holder. Apologies. That's terrible. I just watched the replay on the iPad because it's, you know, it's always lagging a little bit. Okay. Alrighty. Well, it's always interesting to me, you know, to see the difference in the before painting and then the live painting. Yeah, I like him. I mean, I have to say, I think that the bird baby looks a bit more natural in this one, I guess. But in here, you know what I like about it is that it stands out a little more. So I guess we talked so much about the baby bird not being visible that I inadvertently made it look a bit more in the foreground here in my live painting. All right. Okay, folks, I hope you enjoyed this session. If you painted alongside with me, please tag me if you publish it over on Instagram. I also wanted to say at this point, because I know that some of you don't use Instagram, and even, you know, for those of you who watch the stream later, you can always feel free and just honestly, for this challenge, you can also email me your paintings to keiko@thealohastudios.com. So I know that the challenge is mostly on my Instagram account, but I also want to keep it open for people who just want to share their artwork with me for the Aloha 24 challenge. Alrighty, so I have more tutorials for you in the upcoming weeks, but I also know that it's the holiday season, at least for me and for those of you who celebrate. So for me, it's going to be a little more busy in the upcoming weeks. I guess I don't think there will be another live stream for this challenge. I will let you know if otherwise, but I definitely have prepared tutorials for you. So stay tuned. And I can already say this, the giveaway at the end of the year is going to be a very special one. So I encourage you to participate in this month's challenge. Okay, I'll see you next time. Until then, happy creating. Stay well, stay safe, and aloha.